Once upon a time, in a cramped and forgotten corner of a bustling city, there was a little cat named M. He lived in a rundown slum tucked deep inside narrow, damp alleyways where sunlight barely reached. M was born into a poor family. His mother died young from illness, and his father sadly perished in an accident while collecting scrap near the train tracks. Since he was just a kitten, M had to live alone in a dilapidated attic where the tin roof leaked. Every time it rained, the wooden floor creaked with every step, and the cold wind often blew through the cracks in the wall. Yet every night, M lit a small candle and looked at an old, worn notebook left behind by his father. Side were scattered memories in "I was his father, I'm your grandfather." Tears welled up in Emma's eyes. After all these lonely years, he had found his family. His grandfather, MOCT, was once a traveling artist. He had wandered far from home, lost in regret after many life struggles. He never knew he had a grandson not until he returned to the city and heard whispers of a little bread-selling kitten with a kind heart. From that day forward, M moved into a small house in the countryside with his grandfather. It had a vegetable garden, a warm kitchen, and most importantly, love. Together, they baked bread, not for selling, but to give away to other street animals in the city: cats, dogs, and rabbits who were once as lost as M. No longer alone, M found joy not just in survival, but in sharing. Every loaf he made if his grandfather carried the warmth of to hearts healed by family. And every time it rained, they would sit by the window, splitting a warm loaf in half, and retell the story of how they found each other. Because sometimes, all it takes is a loaf of bread, a little kindness, and a heart that refuses to give up to turn a lost life into a loving one. The bread-selling cat, a story about love, loss, and life. In a forgotten corner of a big, busy city, far from the glowing lights and shiny buildings, lived a little cat named M. His home was no more than a crumbling attic in a poor neighborhood, hidden behind winding alleyways and stacks of rusty rooftops. Every time it rained, water poured through the holes in the tin roof, soaking the wooden floor and Emma's tiny blanket. But this attic, as broken as it was all M had. M was born into hardship. His mother passed away when he was just a kitten, taken by illness. His father, who had loved him dearly, died in a tragic accident while collecting scraps near the train tracks. After that, M had no one. He was an orphan, small, silent, and alone in the world. But M was not bitter. Even though he had little, he held onto a simple truth. If he wanted kindness in his life, he had to first give it to the world. Every morning, before the city woke up, M would rise quietly, put on a tattered leaf hat, and carry an old wicker basket on his back. Inside were loaves of bread he made himself, humble ones, filled only with a little pint and a few slices of cucumber. They were nothing fancy, but they were warm, soft, and made with love. He had learned how to bake from an old woman who once lived nearby. She had no family either, and when she saw M struggling to survive, she welcomed him into her small kitchen. She taught him how to knead dough, how to wait patiently as the bread rose, and how to fold in care with every ingredient. Before she passed away, she placed a paw on his and said, "Even if the world is harsh, never let it harden your heart." And M never did. Though he had little, he always shared. He would give free bread to hungry children and stray animals in the alleys. He smiled to everyone, even when his belly growled from hunger. Those who tasted his bread often said it made them feel warm inside, like they were back home, safe and loved. Still, deep inside, M carried a quiet wish to have a family again. He had never met his grandfather, MOCT, only heard whispers of his name in the pages of his father's old notebook. That name felt like a mystery, tied to his past, a puzzle he might never solve. One rainy afternoon, after a long, cold day of selling bread, M sat under the awning of an old library. His basket was nearly empty, and so was his heart. He watched raindrops fall like silver threads from the roof. He hugged himself and closed his eyes, wondering would he always be alone. But then, a voice. "Excuse me," the voice said gently, "are you the son of Emogo?" M opened his eyes slowly. In front of him stood an elderly cat with grey fur and kind eyes. His coat was worn, and his tail was short, just like the stories had said. In that moment, the world stood still. The sound of the rain faded, and Em's heart flooded with something he hadn't felt in years: belonging. His grandfather, MOCT, had spent years traveling, searching, trying to make peace with his past. He had never known his son had a child. When he returned to the city and heard of a small, kind kitten selling bread with his father's name in a notebook, he followed the trail and found M. From that day on, M no longer had to face life alone. They moved into a small cottage at the edge of the city, surrounded by trees, sunshine, and birdsong. But it was warm. Together, they baked bread each morning, laughed over spilled flour, and shared stories of the family M never got to know. But M didn't forget where he came from. Every week, he and his grandfather returned to the slums, carrying baskets of bread to give to the poor, the lonely, and the lost, just like he once was. And here's what M's story teaches us. Life can be hard, but you must never let it turn you cold. Be kind, even when you're hurting. True strength is not in how much you have, but in how much you give. Family may not always be near, but love can still find its way to you sometimes when you least expect it. Hope is like a loaf of bread. It rises slowly, needs patience, and is best when shared warm. So if you ever feel small, alone, or forgotten, remember M, the little cat who sold bread with a smile. He didn't have much, but he had heart. And sometimes, that's more than enough to change a life, even your own. Thank you so much for listening to M's story. We hope it touched your heart and reminded you of the power of kindness, resilience, and love. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next heartwarming adventures. More meaningful stories are coming your way, stories that inspire, heal, and bring us all a little closer together. See you in the next video, and until then, stay kind, stay curious, and keep believing in the good.